we've been concerned about trying to live a life that will leave a legacy to the people who follow us. And I found that one of the best ways to gain wisdom is to sit down and just visit with old people. It's interesting that in our society, we tend to marginalize those who really have gained the most wisdom. They might not be as technologically savvy as some of the young people. They might not be hip with the styles and all that stuff. But what's true of an older person who is maturing in the faith is that they have navigated this minefield called life. And they've learned some things. And if we stop and we listen, we can learn a great deal. For example, I have grown a great deal just from thinking about Maxine Clover's life and that whole attitude of don't worry about the past and don't fret about the future because that distracts you from the now. What a good lesson that is in life. Live until you die instead of dying while you live. There's a lot of great things we can learn from older people. And if you just sit down and ask them questions, you'll be amazed at the wisdom that comes out. Now, what we're going to do today is basically we're going to listen to an older person giving advice to a younger person. Because at this point, the Apostle Paul's nearing the end of his life. I don't know how old he is at this point, but he's older. He's been through a lot. He's navigated this minefield in a very war-torn time. And he's speaking to Timothy. And listen to what he tells us. Right off the bat, he says, run from anything that stimulates youthful lusts. Run from youthful lusts. Instead, pursue righteous living, faithfulness, love, and peace. Enjoy the companionship of those who call on the Lord with pure hearts. So what he's telling us that we should run away from some things, and we should run toward some others. So things that he tells us to run away, he says, flee youthful lusts. Now, our problem with that is whenever we hear lust, we think about sex. And so we think that what he's saying is run from anything that might ensnare you sexually. Well, that's part of it. But lust means this insatiable, unsatisfiable passion for something. And it could include relationships. It could include a lot of things. Let's go through a list here. It could be a lust for pleasure. And that includes illicit relationships, sex outside of marriage. It could have to do with extramarital affairs. It could have to do with substance abuse. College students exemplify this. They have to get drunk all the time because then they feel like they're having fun, or they're taking drugs, or they've always got to have some kind of new high that they are enjoying, whether it's jumping out of an airplane, bungee jumping, whatever the case may be. There's this lust for the rush. Paul says, be careful with this. There is, secondly, a lust for power. And we see this in our society where everything seems to be a contest. Have you noticed that? If you say, well, a checkout line, I don't know if you rung that up correctly. Well, now it's a contest. Oh, yes, I did. Well, could you just check it? What are you saying about me? And it becomes this argument. This is our society. We want to correct every mistake that somebody says verbally and pounce on things because we want to win. We don't have discussions anymore. We have contests. And Paul says that's the wrong kind of lust, and we'll get into that a lot more later. And then there's the lust for the material, where we have to have more and more stuff. We've got to have the nicest home, the fastest car. We've got to have the most the most appropriate clothes. We've got to go on the best vacations. We've got to do all this stuff. It doesn't matter how much it costs. We'll go into debt in order to have these things. And so what ends up happening is we spend our whole life running away from creditors, trying to find that one material thing that's finally going to satisfy us. and it's nuts. If we could put this in a positive list, I wrote this down. There's, I think, some positive principles that we get from this. Number one, make sex an expression of a committed relationship and not the basis of a relationship. In order for this to happen, sex must take a back seat to building a relationship. In other words, save sex for marriage. Second, refuse to surrender control of your life to anything else. In other words, a drug, a substance, guard against being controlled by video games, chat rooms, or anything else like that. Where you say, well, I've got to finish this. We got all these young kids that come over to our house now for dinner on Sunday. Whoa, I'm getting old, you know. And you know, I walk in from church and you look around the living room and everybody's on a device. Everybody. Time for dinner. I'm not done with the game yet. Tough. You know, Grandpa's not real happy at that time. Anyhow, Paul tells us, be filled with the Spirit. Don't be drunk with wine. Don't be filled with other stuff. Be filled with the Spirit. Anytime we give control of our life to anything, we're giving up our life. We're giving ourselves over to Satan. When something controls us, something we have to do, we're in trouble. It's time to run. Third, determine what you truly need before you go out and buy what you want. Now, I know that older people are great with this. They always, you know, I realize I'm becoming one of those older people, but as I talk to much older people, the thing that they say to me is, don't buy what you can't pay for. Just don't do it. Don't use credit cards if you can avoid it. It's good advice. I think one of the things that we find in the churches, we have people coming in all the time asking for help with various bills, and it's tough right now. You know, people struggle. They're going through a tough time. I get that. But a lot of times what happens is these people come in and say, you know, after I paid my cable bill, and of course they've got all the movie channels. After they've paid their cable bill and their cell phone bill, and they pull out their smartphone and say, hey, look at my kids. You know, look at how hungry they look. Okay, the reason they're hungry is because you're making some really bad choices. You're choosing to get all these luxuries instead of paying your simple bills. And there's a lot of it. There are people who don't have any money because they're spending it at the casino, they're spending all their money on the lottery, they're drinking it in a tavern. And they say, I don't have any money. There's a reason you don't have any money. It's because you're running after what you want and not considering what you need. Fourth, we need to work hard and pursue a servant mentality. Jesus told us that we are to serve one another. We're supposed to relate to each other like he did. And this contentious attitude, this lust for power that is in our society, what would happen if people started actually talking to each other? What would happen in our country if legislators talked to each other rather than fought each other? I mean, wow, some things could maybe even get done. So those are some of the things that he's telling us. Now, when we see that we've got a problem in one of these areas, notice what he tells us to do. Run. I like that. He didn't say, well, just stand there and fight through this. You got enough power. You can overcome. Run. You get into this kind of problem. Don't mess around with it. Run from those lusts. You may need to change some friendships. You may need to cut up some credit cards. You may need to get rid of some junk in your house that's becoming a controlling substance for you. You may need to throw out some of the video games. You may need to put a timer on various things. Whatever the case may be, take decisive action. And so one of the ways to do this is to find somebody who will be kind of like an accountability partner for you, somebody that you can talk to and say, would you once in a while just meet with me and let's just talk about our lives? And would you honestly give me feedback? Now, there's got to be somebody that's another believer, somebody who shares your value system, somebody that can be honest with you and you won't get mad. But would you serve as my accountability partner, and would you just reflect back to me what you're seeing in my life? Those are good things to have, and they're precious people. But he also says, pursue righteous living. Righteous living is a God-honoring lifestyle. To live the way that God has told us to live. So he says, pursue that kind of life. Pursue faithfulness. Faithfulness is loyalty to the Lord. It is living out our beliefs. It is saying, I not only say I believe this, but I am going to live this out. That's what faithfulness is. To pursue love, which is seeking the highest good for other people. Pursue peace, which is a good relationship with God and with others that's putting aside rancor and bitterness and competition. And then he says to enjoy the companionship of those who call on the Lord with pure hearts. We are to be people who get together with other believers. We cheer each other on. And to be honest, you hear us a lot of times saying, boy, you need to be in worship. You should get involved in a Sunday school class, get involved in Bible studies, get involved in things where you're with other believers. Why? Because we're trying to build the numbers? No, because the Bible tells us we need this. We need to help each other because we're getting all this negative influence from all around us. We need some people that are going to help us have positive influences. And so we say to the kids, be involved in Awana, be involved in the youth groups, get involved in Sunday school. We say the same thing to the adults. Why? Because we need each other. Because we run into all kinds of people. Say, these people are our friends. Are they good friends? Are they friends that are leading you in the right direction, or are they dragging you away from the Lord? By that same token, what kind of a friend are you? Are you running after the crowd and people are running after you, or are you standing for Jesus Christ and allowing other people to anchor to you? It's a good question. Now, in verses 23 through 26, he continues to be practical here. Again, now he said this before, and when if he says again, you get the feeling that this time he's like underlining it, because he's saying, okay, I want you to get this. Again, I say, don't get involved in foolish, ignorant arguments that only start fights. A servant of the Lord must not quarrel, but must be kind to everyone, be able to teach and be patient with difficult people, gently instruct those who oppose the truth. Perhaps God will change those people's hearts, and they will learn the truth. Then they will come to their senses and escape from the devil's trap, for they have been held captive by him to do whatever he wants. Now, I want you to see some observations here. The first thing, that what we're seeing from Paul is he's giving us a list of things to do that's the opposite of what the world tells us to do. Here's what I think is the message we get from the world. They say to us, don't take anything from anybody. Don't get pushed around. Demand your rights. Use your position to intimidate other people. Exploit the weakness of your opponents. Focus on winning. When you have somebody on the ropes, don't let them up. That's our society. It's all about beating the other guy. This is the opposite of that he's telling us. Second, notice that Paul is challenging Timothy to see a bigger picture. He's saying, Timothy, you need to understand that you can win a skirmish but lose the war. You can get somebody to agree with you or back down in one thing, but if it keeps them from coming to Christ, you've lost the war. So be careful where you're choosing to fight. Don't miss the big picture that we are ambassadors for Jesus, not people who are ambassadors for anybody else. And the third thing I want you to see generally of this advice is that this can apply to any relationship. This counsel is good for your marriage, is good for relating to your kids, your coworkers, the people that drive you crazy, and we all have them. Some of those people actually live in our homes, you know, and so, you know, we've all got those people. All these principles apply in every circumstance like that. So let's look at some of the principles. Number one, quarreling never accomplishes anything positive. That's his point here. Don't get involved in foolish, ignorant arguments that only start fights. Fighting doesn't accomplish anything. We divide over the dumbest things. We divide over interpretations. We divide over preferences. We divide over sports and politics. We divide over the color of carpets. We divide over everything. And the idea here is that division does not lead to growth. If we're going to divide over everything, then we're going to accomplish nothing. Because if we're going to argue about dumb things, we're never going to get a chance to talk about important things. I don't know about you. If somebody is going to be arguing about everything, oh gosh, don't even bring that subject up because this is going to get that person going. And if you're afraid that everything is going to turn into an argument, you're not going to talk about significant things with them. And that door to leading them to Christ will be shut. So this idea that quarreling does not accomplish anything, that's important to get. If we draw a line in the sand over lesser things, we're never going to get the opportunity to bring that person to Jesus. And so I think Paul is saying, you need to pick your fights. That's some of the best advice that was given to me as a young pastor. Pick your fights. Decide what hill you're willing to die on. And be done with the lesser things. And so you're going to find that there's going to be a lot of things I'm just not going to argue with. I'm not going to argue with you about how the Lord is going to come in the end. I just want him to come, you know? I'm not going to argue with you about how much water should be in baptism, how often we should take communion, whether we should have wine in communion or not. I'm not going to argue politics with you. I'm not going to argue sports with you. I'm not going to argue any of that stuff with you because my primary concern is to help you come to a relationship with Jesus Christ. And if I get distracted by those other things, I lose the right to talk to you about the important things. The second principle he gives us is be kind. Be kind. He doesn't just say be kind. He says be kind to everyone. Oh, crud. I want to be kind to the people I like, but kind to everyone. You don't know the everyones I have to deal with, you know? Be kind. We can change the world if we just start being kind to each other. If we start saying hi to people on the street, and I know in Harpe, everybody knows that you wave at everybody even if you don't know who they are, just because otherwise they're going to think you're stuck up. Good principle. But if we're just kind to each other and listen to each other and paid attention to each other and treated each other with respect as opposed to a means to an end, wow, it changed the world. If we would be kind to other drivers on the road, I know, I'm getting a little close now. Maybe I should back off, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna be kind and just go for the jugular because we want to win, you know? We need to be kind to our spouses, to our kids, to our coworkers. And it doesn't mean that you become a doormat. It means that you show the grace of God, that you overlook petty offenses, that you take into account that everybody's got idiosyncrasies and everybody's weird when you get to know them, you know? And we just take that into account and say, that's okay. Then he says, explain, don't berate. Be able to teach and be patient with difficult people. Be able to teach. I keep trying to get this across to kids. You know, shouting doesn't get people to listen to you anymore. When you raise your voice in an argument, what does the other person do? They raise their voice. And now you've got people who are shouting at each other and nobody is listening. Nobody. Everybody's trying to outshout the other person. That's insane. You want to make a point during an argument? You know what you do? You talk softer. You lower your voice. You know, what'd you say? Well, I said this. And now the whole temperature of the argument starts coming down. And if you can stay calm, you can have an impact on the argument. He says that our job is not to ridicule somebody for what they believe. Our job is to help that person see that what they believe may not be sufficient for what they want in life. That maybe what you believe is not actually leading you to God. Maybe it's leading you away from Him. Maybe what you believe, even though it's passionately held, is it possible that you might be mistaken? If you are willing to teach rather than humiliate somebody, wow, you can accomplish so much more in life. Be patient, he says. Be patient. We need to be patient in a lot of areas. We need to be patient with other people. Jonathan Edwards used to talk about the judgment of charity. And what he meant by that is that we should love other people. We should give people the benefit of the doubt. We should be patient with other people the same way we want them to give us the benefit of the doubt, be patient, and listen to us. So we need to understand that we're all in the process of growth. As Roger said this morning, he's a work in progress, and we all are works in progress. And we can be patient with that. I'm not there yet. You're not there yet. Let's give each other some time to get there. But we also need to be patient with God. We need to understand that God is calling us to scatter seeds. And some seeds are going to sprout quickly. Some, like the giant oak, it's going to take a while. And our job is to be patient, to do what God has called us to do, and then wait for Him to do what He can do. Whether it is teaching our kids, and we keep trying to pour our values, pour God's values into their life, and we say they don't seem to be getting it. That's okay. Just keep pouring it in there. You say, well, I keep trying to love my spouse, but they don't seem to be responsive. That's okay. Keep loving them. Keep planting seeds of grace. Those difficult people in our life, I'm going to keep pouring my life into those people, but boy, it's tough sometimes. Yes, it is. But keep planting those seeds and trust that God is going to use your faithfulness to do something extraordinary. This is true when it comes to evangelism, when it comes to us trying to bring people into a relationship with Christ. Part of the problem is we get very impatient. We think that once we start talking to somebody about their faith, we have to get them all the way to heaven in one conversation. And sometimes it's going to take a series of conversations. Sometimes it's going to take several different people talking to them about the things of God. It doesn't mean that we're not bold, but it means we're patient. I think back to a time I've told this story before, and I apologize to those of you who hear it and could relay it as your own, because you've heard it so many times. But I was 15 or 16 years old, and I was just starting to preach at that point. And I was at summer camp the one year, and they said to me, Bruce, you want to talk to all the kids at camp? I guess. So that night, we were in the upstairs of the lodge, and all these teenagers were sitting there, and it was a pretty heady thing, you know. So I got up and I opened my Bible, like Billy Graham. And when I got really into it, Billy holds it back, but to be honest with you, I had no idea what I was talking about. I was rambling. I was saying lots of stuff. I hope I don't do that anymore. I hope I'm making sense. But that night, I was just, I don't know, talking because I had the stage. And afterwards, I did what Billy would do. You know, we do have the same initials. Billy Graham, you know. So I'm thinking, you know, maybe I'm kind of a Billy Graham wannabe. And so I said to the kids, okay, if any of you want to come to Christ, and really what I was saying, if any of you got anything at all out of my message and think that you'd like to know more, come on forward. I didn't think anybody would come forward. I'll be honest with you, I was just doing what I thought you're supposed to do. I was a young preacher. You give an invitation. And a guy came forward. And I thought, oh, man, what do I do now? I hadn't thought this through, you know? And this guy, who was actually from our church, and Sam and I, we'd been talking all day long, and I was excited to see him there, but I didn't know what to do with him up there. And so I went over to Sam, and I started to mumble something about him being a sinner. That's always a good place to start, I guess. And tell him the truth, you know. But then all these other kids started coming forward. And it was like the whole camp was there. And I'm paralyzed. Let's kneel. Well, I should have said, let's kneel and close our eyes. And I should have said, I'm getting the heck out of here because I don't have any idea what to do. And so I mumbled some prayer, and these people prayed it. And, you know, I'm sure that coming out of that night, some people would say, wow, that was the best evangelistic evening we ever had. Look at the response of all those kids. Look at all the kids that got saved. But did they? They responded to a stimulus. But did they have any idea what they were doing? My great fear as I look back on that day is that there would be some kids that walked away from there and said, okay, we're right with God. We don't have to worry about this anymore. And they never gave another thought to it because I was not patient with God. If I had just said, you know, guys, if you want to talk more about this, let's talk. Or better yet, why don't you talk to some of these guys who really do have some answers to your questions? God calls us to trust him. Do what I call you to do, and I don't call you to have results. I call you to be faithful. God's not measuring us by what we, by the number of people we can say responded to us. He's measuring us by whether or not we did what he asked us to do. So that's our challenge. As we look at this, I hope you see that there is some really good stuff here. Paul's reaching the end of his life, and he's sharing passionately with Timothy about some of the things that he learned. It's like sitting down and just listening to the wisdom of an older person. And what he said is that our job is to open discussions to present the truth of the gospel. It's not to convince other people that they're wrong. It's simply to inform other people of how God feels about them. Think about what happens when someone aggressively says or implies to you that you're foolish, that you obviously don't know what you're talking about. I don't know about you, but I don't stop and say, wow, you may be right. No, that aggressive approach makes me aggressive, and now the war is on. I encourage you, just as I encourage myself, to practice these simple principles at home with your family members. Guard against those youthful passions taking over your life. And you don't have to be young for you to be struggling with youthful passions. Work together as a family to pursue the things that really matter to God. Some of these lists of righteous things. Work on it as a family. Pursue those things. Our calling is not to get other people to like us. That's not our job. It's about pointing people past us to Jesus. It's to say, there's somebody I would like to introduce to you if you'd give me the opportunity. We have a choice. We can follow the crowd, or we can lead the crowd. And that crowd may be our family, our friends, our community, our co-workers. We can lead other people to a life-changing relationship with Christ. But in order to do that, we've got to listen to how to do it correctly. May God help us to consistently serve Him. And may He give us hearts that will relate to each other in a way that spotlights grace and mercy rather than anger and judgment. Let's pray. Father, we know from our own experience how much the world needs the things that you tell us. We're so tired of fighting. Lord, you've reminded us today that there's absolutely no reason why we have to fight. That somewhere in a fight, somebody needs to speak with some sense. Help us to be those people. We ask in Jesus' name, amen. Let's conclude today.